John Wooden is quoted as saying the greatest achievement isn't winning, but inspiring others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more. Let's talk about being a positive influencer on today's episode of the Playing with a Purpose podcast. Welcome to the Playing with a Purpose podcast, where we explore topics related to the moral development of collegiate athletes and young people as it relates to character, responsibility, and purpose. I'm your host, Matt Barker, and today I'm excited to have Park University Athletic Director, Miss Kristin Gillette, with me on today's episode. Kristin, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me here today.
Yeah, it's going to be a great episode. I'm actually here live in Kansas City, which is one of my favorite places to visit. So I'm really excited to be here and have a couple interviews set up while I'm here. So I was glad I was able to get over here to Park University. Lovely town, lovely campus. It's only the first or second time I've been here. So it's a great place to visit. What's it like working here?
It's a hidden gem, for one, that we need to make not so hidden because I love it. It is a place to, like you mentioned, our main street is kind of quaint, yet we're 10 minutes from downtown. So you get the best of both worlds, and the people here are awesome.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
For those that are listeners that might not know a lot about you, tell us a little bit of background about maybe some prior work experience that led you to where you are today and some of the different things that you've done as far as the Champions of Character, but also with the athletics as well.
Sure. Well, ironically, I really never said to myself, Kristin, you're going to be an athletics director one day. It really wasn't on my radar, but I grew up loving playing sports. I played every sport you could have as a child. And through that, had just a wonderful high school, junior high experience with coaches that just surrounded our teams and myself with just care and built into us to where then it really inspired me to want to continue to go on to college and continue playing. Had the opportunity to be in the AMC at Hannibal-LaGrange for 2 years and then transferred over to William Jewell here in the Heart. And then from there, I knew at that point I wanted to go on and get my master's at Gonzaga University, explore sports administration. And even then, I pursued it with a mindset for coaching. Again, not necessarily the athletic administration role. At that same time, like all graduate students who are young and have way too much energy, I took on 5 jobs in multiple areas of sports. And one of those was coaching at Whitworth College. Used to be NAIA. They were D3 at the time. Also helped teach PE at Gonzaga and do those kind of things. Anyway, came back to Kansas City after that time, coached high school, and also helped serve as a youth sports director for the YMCA. So I've really seen it from the youth level all the way to the collegiate level as far as coaching and administration. And just the other day I was at a game standing there with my mom, and I think it had to be my son's game. There's so many games we go to these days, but he's 14 and the game was just absolutely competitive in all the perfect ways that you want from sport. And I remember just telling my mom, just love what I do. Yeah. I love being around sports and what it can bring out in people.
Yeah. And
so here I am.
You mentioned, a lot of the different 5 jobs at one time. It was just preparing you to be an athletic director because you're juggling 50 different things at one time, just like a lot of people in athletics have to do. So you did work at the NAIA National Office as the director of the Champions of Character program before going to Mid-America Nazarene and then eventually landing here at Park University. What was it like making that transition from a national office going to an institution? And maybe what are some things maybe you incorporated from your time there as far as Champions of Character, trying to incorporate some of those things at the institutional level?
Yeah. Well, one, everywhere I've been, I've just had great mentors, right? Yeah. And one being Lori Thomas, who hired me initially at the NAIA National Office. And in the initial role was sport manager. And so understanding the value behind providing a great championship experience and just what that experience means to the student athlete. So when I then came to campus at Mid-America Nazarene University, and very fortunate to learn under Todd Garrett, who's at the helm there, he really gave me the reins in what that game operational experience was like on campus, and then also being able to help assist the coaches to provide the best experience that they could for their own student athletes, so where they could really just coach and not have to worry about all the ancillary things that surround that environment. And that's where I love to serve, right?
Yeah.
And I think with Champions of Character and that servant leadership, that for me was exemplified in that way of being able to assist in that role. And it was great to be back on campus and have one team to cheer for. Not that you don't love it at the national office, and all those lessons and skill sets are so valuable to then be able to take to a campus. Probably the best thing, though, of being at the national office was the relationship development throughout the country.
Yeah.
I've got friends everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. And that has helped as you try to mold your own culture and team per your campus. I can really lean on people to provide some of those best practices.
Yeah, definitely a lot of networking that goes on there. Maybe what are some things that you've seen throughout the time that you were there at the national office and now that have changed that you think are for the better as far as Champions of Character, some things that have evolved a little bit with the Champions of Character program?
Yeah. One of the things that I really love seeing is this focus on the mind, body, and character. It's kind of this wheel and all the different cogs, right, that are impactful for the student athlete. And there's so much, even since that time of being at the national office, that students are impacted more so now, social media, NIL, and so mental health. I mean, we're having these conversations more and more where then those topics just weren't surfacing up at that point.
Yeah, it wasn't as mainstream, wasn't talked about as much. Kind of more in the background, yeah. So this episode that we're getting into today is being a positive influencer. And this word is one that we throw around a lot now that probably a few years ago, influencer wasn't used as much, but now we have, like you mentioned, social media, and we have people that make their whole careers as being influencers for marketing different products, and just being an influencer in the spotlight, whatever it might be. So we hear this word a lot, being an influencer, and we think of it more in terms of marketing a lot of times, but I think our athletes that we come in contact with at the NAIA level, NCAA level too, have this opportunity. They have a platform. They have this chance to influence others in a positive way or sometimes in a negative way. So for you as an athletic director, prior work experience at the NAIA national level, how would you define being a positive influencer in the context of sports or athletics?
Right. Influencer definitely has new context, right? But ultimately, it's that power to affect. And so when you add positive in front of it, that power to affect, positivity. Boy, I wish I could get paid for being for a positive influencer, right? How do I figure that out? But that's what we're doing, right? We are trying to fill people's cups.
Yeah.
Right. And so many times in so many different ways, people's cups are drained from whatever that influence is that's coming at them. And so I really look at the position I'm in as an athletics director to be the one to fill the cup. And ultimately, if we're trying to impact the student athlete, well, it can have an indirect impact by how I'm managing our staff, how I'm managing the coaches. It's all the little things that then add up to really hopefully provide that positive impact.
Yeah. What are some ways maybe you've seen here at Park University or other places you've been? One of the things we think about being a positive influencer is investing in others, sometimes even outside of sports in general. Is there any success stories that you've seen maybe here at Park where students have worked maybe in the community, some different things to influence others, maybe to have that positive perception among even people that maybe don't even know anything about athletics, just kind of work in the community? Any success stories that come to mind with that?
Yeah. One in particular comes to mind with Emma Perry. She's on the women's basketball team, or just recently graduated with her time. She transferred in. She's a local student athlete, and she had the opportunity to go to the Red Cross collegiate leadership program. She's a nursing major. And so for her to have that experience out in Washington, D.C., come back and help with our blood drives and draw awareness from the community. It's not just the Park community coming in to do that, but we get outside community members. So that one was really great. And then she kills it on the basketball court, and there is something about a student athlete that just gets it done in whatever sport environment that they're in such a positive way that then that impact beyond the court, beyond the field is powerful when maybe they're not even necessarily knowing that they're doing it. Yeah. But even in the times when they are intentional about it, there's a lot of power in that. So that's one example. We have a lot. I mean, I could continue to go on basketball players and track athletes and baseball, and you name it. One that comes to mind that kind of from your guys' area, we have recently started this Remy Williams Invitational basketball tournament in October. Okay. Remy was a kid who grew up in Kansas City, went to the NAIA basketball tournament. As an honorary coach, got connected with Georgetown College. Okay. From Georgetown College and that experience of growing up and always being with that team, he then chose to go to Georgetown College, became a basketball manager. Yeah. Then through that, made just tremendous impact there. And if I step back, the reason this story is close to me is he played football for my brother at a local high school here in town. And my brother was able to take a group of football players down to Guatemala, build latrines, safe fire pit areas where a lot of times that's what they were cooking on. And through that experience, Remy continued to go back to Guatemala. He taught English, he did some things. But fast forward then to Georgetown and that experience through the NAIA. When Georgetown won in 2000, I think it was 19, that was his senior year. Just a really cool culmination. But then he went on to study law at UMKC. Went off one night to grab dinner before his bar exam and was tragically killed in a car accident where he was hit by a drunk driver. 4 years later now, we work with Chris there at Georgetown, and we've invited him back to Kansas City. Provides the family and friends an opportunity to remember Remy. It does some fundraising to help with their parent. His parents have now opened up a school down in Guatemala. My family got to visit down there. But our message then to these student athletes who are coming in to play this tournament is, one, to remind them about, again, being under the influence, right? Yeah. That you got to be smart about the decisions you're making there. But as a reminder that no matter the age, you can make a positive impact. And Remy is one that comes to mind for that. And then you add the sport component where we're trying to get the toughest teams in the NAIA to come play, right? Yeah. Because there is community and competition, and to play at your best level and to do it the right way and not to try to beat this RPI system, right? But let's just come play ball to play ball and do it around a message that really hits home. And so for all you out there, we want you to start in Kansas City and finish in Kansas City. So bring Freed out here, both men's and women's.
We'll work on that between now and then. And it goes back to this living out these values on and off the field. It's not even, a lot of times, like the story you just mentioned, it's not even really about the game itself. It's what are we, who are we influencing, whether the family that we're supporting, awareness for the school in Guatemala. It's investing in the next generation as well. So a lot of times what we see being a positive influencer definitely comes into play in the community, but it also comes into play, who are these younger players on the team that we're going to influence? If we're doing things the right way, they're going to see us and they're going to in turn do things the right way. So I think there's also that component with being a good example for your teammates as well, being a positive influencer. We could probably talk a little bit about there too. Thinking about competitive drive, maintaining sportsmanship. Again, like we just talked about, younger athletes see how the older athletes respond to adversity, how they do all the different things within a sports context, how they respond. How's the best way that you maybe have learned to balance having that competitive drive, but also keeping your composure and maintaining that composure, but also being a good influencer on your teammates and others as well? Yeah.
I know throughout some of your podcasts, some of these themes or ideas that I might touch on are things that you've already talked about. So just in this idea of that you pick a role, right? So whether you're coming at this from the coach perspective or the student perspective, I think I would tackle this from that coach perspective of the coach really helps set the expectation. Right? What is the mark that they want their student athletes to reach? And from that, they've got to explain what that role is and role play it. Like when you're faced with this adversity, how are we going to respond then to that, and what is my expectation in that response as a coach? And then when those student athletes are out in that environment where they're then facing that adversity, it's praising.
Yeah.
What
reinforcing.
And reinforcing that, or you're correcting that behavior. You're steering them to ultimately, again, what that expectation of what you're hoping they will achieve, I think is a big part of helping students have that composure when their character in that moment of having to make a decision of what they're going to do.
Yeah. There was a Vince Lombardi quote that I kind of looked up, and it always kind of sticks with me when thinking about how to have that competitive drive, but also wanting to do it in the right way. And he says, true competitors don't just want to win, they want to win the right way. And I think the NAIA is kind of taking a little bit of that play the right way, kind of the same idea with that theme there. And I think that's very important to want to win. It's good to have, there's nothing wrong with having the competitive drive to
Absolutely.
win, but having that other things that go along with it is important too, as far as the right attitude, sportsmanship, character, integrity, all those different things as well. I know you've probably worked with a lot of athletes, a lot of the coaches that work with these athletes individually as well. We have in athletics, I just know this from working at Freed-Hardeman in athletics, we have students, athletes from different backgrounds, cultures, a lot of times from different countries, a lot of times that have a lot of things that make up who they are. So what role do you think family, background, culture even plays in how people think they need to be as far as a positive influencer? There's a lot of things that how they grew up that probably influences that. What are some things that come to mind for you?
Well, this is not a loaded question.
Yeah, right. You have 10 minutes to answer this one.
The reality is that there are some kids that are just going to get a head start because they're growing up in a family environment in which they feel safe. They feel the opportunity to grow with their mistakes. And so you're just going to have that. And those kids are going to excel. But it does not mean that a kid who is in an environment that maybe they don't have that feeling of safety, that there is a coach who will step into their life at some point and help that student catch up. And that is what is powerful with coaches. And yet, we know we are saying the right way to play, but that right has got to be really pointed north, right? What is that compass in which is driving that coach? And so the beautiful thing, though, in regards to the background and the culture is those kids, that's what they're bringing that provides the value. It stretches us with the diverse thinking and the different music and the different thought perspectives.
Different personalities even.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think from that's where it really can strengthen a team if everybody is willing to learn and not try to change that culture of what that person is bringing to the table. It can really help provide strength in that team. So that's a tough one, though, in regards to what it all brings. But I do think that there are environments that can be created to provide an environment for kids to thrive. And sports provides that.
Yeah, and we call that a lot of times team culture. So we try to develop a team culture. And I've heard, I don't remember which coach I've interviewed that mentioned this. He used the word mold. And so like you're molding a piece of clay, like you're not changing it completely. You're just kind of molding it to fit. You have your own kind of personality, but you're part of this team. So this is part of you as well. So it's kind of molding them and having them think about things in a different way sometimes. And that's sometimes more difficult with some than others. Like you mentioned, some people are more used to having a team environment where they're required to do this. Others come in and they've just been more of an individual their whole life. So they're not used to playing with a team. So that can be a challenge as well. You mentioned mental health. We talked about that at the beginning with talking about being a positive influencer. This is more of a word that we talk a lot more about than we used to. It used to be kind of a hush-hush word. We don't talk about our feelings, our mental health and things. It's discussed a lot more now. So how important is mental health in maintaining a positive influence? sometimes people say we have to get ourselves right before we can influence others in the right way. So having that right mindset is important as well. Kind of a two-parter here. How important is mental health? But then what are some things maybe that we can do or athletes can do to be mentally strong, both in competition and outside of it? Another loaded question.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I think for sure that mental health and the stigma behind that, right, is going away, and that it needs to be talked about. And I recently took my daughter to go listen to Caitlin Clark when she was in town, and she talked about she is meeting with her psychologist daily to talk about just getting the right mindset and focus. And I'm thinking, you would never have heard about that back in the day, right? Yeah. So that already is helping talk about that this is okay to do. Right. And maybe if I want to be at the next level, maybe I need to start taking this seriously. Yeah. But I think for, again, and depending on that role and wherever you're at, an administrator, a coach, a player, that self-talk, right? What you put into yourself, what you tell yourself is ultimately what you're going to believe. Yeah. And so the moment you just continue to knock your own self down, well, why would you rise above that? Because you continue to tell yourself that you're not good enough. And so really changing your self-talk to build your own self up, I think it's extremely important. Understanding your physical needs. I know when I'm tired, you are not going to get my best self. Right. And I can go off the rails really quick. Yeah. So taking care of, again, but that's what you're putting into your body. What is it? How much sleep are you getting? A lot of times you need your quiet time, right? Yeah. You need to spend that time with the Lord. You need to just meditate, whatever that practice is for you. Be in the quiet. Yeah. Right now when it is so loud. Yeah. There's just so much hitting us that time is really important. And I think too, maybe you don't have access to a psychologist, but I practically probably call my mom every day and I'm like, Mom, you're not going to believe what happened today. Or here's this situation. What do I do? Right. Having somebody to just let you blah, 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 right. and try to work through it, I think goes a long ways. And those are some of the practices that I try to put into place that I find help me. Yeah, one of the things I looked up is what you just mentioned, leaning on a support system. Having that support system, whether it's your mom or dad, someone else that you can confide in, is definitely important. Another thing I saw was controlling the controllables, which is what you talked about, knowing your limits, knowing what your abilities are, and if something is not something that you feel you can do, to know that and kind of be self-aware of that, not in a bad way, but being aware. And there's an acronym, and I was trying to think of the L of this acronym, and I'm going to get it right, but it's called HALT. And if it's not good to make decisions when you're hungry, angry, something with an L, and tired. You mentioned tired. And so kind of knowing those limits as well, knowing yourself, being self-aware, knowing what your limits are, what you can do in certain situations, what you can't. That's not only good for you, but also for your team as well, for them to know those things as well. So mental health is important. And like you said with Caitlin Clark, it maybe before wasn't talked about as much, but now that we have these influencers like we're talking about today, speaking openly about it, I think is very important. And it lets people know that it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to have these feelings, and it's okay to address it, So I think that's important as well. I'm laughing to myself right now and just thinking about the family influence and control what you can control. So if I go back and talk with my friends from high school, they're always like, oh, how is your dad? And my dad was the one in the stands who he was always yelling, but it was positive things, right? It wasn't degrading an official. It wasn't telling me how to play. And they always allowed me space after a game. But if I was frustrated or something happened that was out of my control, he would just respond with, it happens. And it's like, well, it's more than that. But it's like, you go, it happens. Yeah. And you're like, yeah, I guess it does. It does happen. And now I just got to work my way through it. Yeah. While you were responding to this, I was not distracted at all, but I was looking up the L because I was like, I need to know. Okay. So HALT is hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. So if you're feeling kind of alone, that's not good as well. But all those other things. So those are all things that shape us, and that's all part of our mental health. And at different points in our life, we're going to have different feelings. Like you mentioned, if we just won a game, we're going to be very excited and happy. If we lose a game,
a very important game, we're going to feel kind of down. And it's good, like we mentioned, to have that support system that you can talk to. Sometimes in the moment, it doesn't always feel great when they're talking to you, but it's always good to be able to express and get those emotions out and not just hold them all inside. Definitely some good thoughts there. We talked about culture, what role that plays in shaping young athletes. Maybe what are some things that you've seen done? We talked about molding different players to fit a team culture that you want all the athletes to kind of buy into, I guess. What are some things that coaches can do to help athletes buy into that culture?
I'm going to take it back a level. Probably one of the things I'm noticing most right now, and again, this is coming at it as a role from a parent perspective. Yeah. What I see right now happening is parents are pulling their child from a team and moving them to the next team, the next great team. And this is happening at the youth level. And so right now, as a parent then, the lessons of commitment and loyalty, which I think we're really striving for at the college level, right? Mm-hmm. Is you want that commitment, you want that loyalty to the institution and who you're playing for on the front of your uniform, is getting lost right now from the lessons that we are teaching our children at a young age. And this idea that if I don't get immediate satisfaction over here, I'm just going to bounce to the next place and try to get immediate satisfaction there. And we're losing the lesson on having to work towards a goal. And that goal is not necessarily the win, right? But yet there's so much of this focus to win, 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 win. I got to be seen, that by the time a coach is getting them now at the collegiate level, it's a hard job. Yeah. And there's so much about the collegiate coaching level right now that has changed within the last 5 years that makes it a really difficult job. They all need to be paid more, presidents of institutions. I mean, it's hard. Yeah. And so how a coach does that, again, I think it's trying to help set the expectations. Yeah. It's being honest in the recruiting process. It's taking us from an administrative approach to really surround all of the teams to help recognize that you all belong to, for us, the Park Pirates as a family here. And we are going to try to provide the best experience every year to where that student doesn't want to leave, right? That they become committed to what we provide and what we hope to help instill as they then move out into the professional world. And it's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you make a great point though, because a lot of these, whether it's AAU basketball, any sort of travel ball, whatever it is, they set this expectation is we're going to get you to this level so you will be seen. And it's all about individual. We want you to do well as an individual. A lot of times student athletes that come to different colleges at whatever level they're playing, they're the best player on their previous team. Right. Or else they wouldn't have been in the position to get a scholarship to play at the collegiate level. So, we've talked a lot about this on other podcasts as well. They're coming into an environment where they might have been the best player on the team they were on, but they might not be the best player here. They might have a different role that they have to play, and they have to kind of accept that role. But the challenge that we have now is, well, if I don't like what I'm getting here, I'll just put myself in the portal and we'll go somewhere else. So it is definitely a big challenge now for coaches to have to try to balance that, like, well, trying to mold them the best I can, but I don't want to be, there's just a tricky balance there with how you do that. How much of an impact do you think older players have in that? We talk about mentoring a lot. We talked about before about how the older players, maybe those that are juniors or seniors, upperclassmen, can influence the younger players. How much of a role do you think they have in, maybe combating some of this negativity as far as, if I don't like what I'm getting here, I'll go somewhere else? What role do you think they play in that?
Yeah, there's a maturity that comes with those juniors and seniors. And I think for us here at Park, and if we're focused on men's basketball, for example, we do get a lot of those transfer guys in. And right away, they can come in and make an impact. And it's not just with their basketball skills. We had a guy this past season, fantastic athlete, 1,000-point scorer, in his collegiate time. But he came down off a rebound and broke his ankle early on in the season, right at the start of conference. And the cool thing was that he went on and continued to cheer from the bench. He was engaged in every practice. It was awesome. that's what you're looking for from those guys, that I think those younger players see and recognize that, again, it's more than the game, right? And yet you're all trying to move towards getting to that goal, and that leadership that he can provide by his actions and his words speak volumes to those younger guys.
Yeah. So what advice would you give if you're working with your different coaches as well as the players maybe here at Park University to athletes that want to maybe step into that leadership role, to be a positive influencer for others? What are some practical things they can do? Not that you have to like do a checklist and I'm going to be a positive influencer by doing all these things, but what are some things maybe mentally, things you can think about as an athlete if you want to be in that role where you're a positive influencer leader on and off the field?
Yeah. Well, one, recognizing and accepting that people are aware of you, like you are being watched, right? Yeah. That you are a role model. And then you have to turn internally and ask yourself, then what type of role model am I going to be? And then hopefully then you're going to lead by example. It's really taking in those core values that the NAIA talks about, and in all the decisions that you're making, again, on the court, off the court, that it's exemplifying hopefully what you've determined is important to you. One of the greatest things, though, that I think every athlete should do and be a part of is to give back to the sport.
Yeah.
When you love the game, when you love your sport, that is where integrity and in sportsmanship and respect for the sport itself is going to come through. And then when you can teach that back to the young kids and provide them fundamentals to build upon and talk about values intentionally with those young kids, that I find is probably one of the things that I advise our players to do. And maybe the coaching route is not their thing. And I'm saying, well, get into officiating.
Right.
We need refs too.
Yeah.
And the moment in anything, when you're scared or you don't understand it, but the moment that you can walk in somebody's shoes, be an official for a day, your respect for that or your understanding of how difficult that really is changes your perspective on then how you are going to respond then when you're back in that role as a player up against an official. I mean, it just changes perspective, and it's good to change your perspective. So anytime we can get student athletes to get some perspective, challenge their thinking, it's a good thing.
Yeah, and you mentioned before about the player that was injured at the very beginning. His perspective changed from being maybe the star player out on the court to maybe being more where he's supporting his teammates. And people seeing him do that is a good example and good influence on them, because he's a guy that could be out there, but just injury forced him to be on the sidelines. And the way he responded to that is being an influence. You know, that's one of those things that we see a lot. You know, talented players that injury gets them. The referee example is a really good one, because I don't think anybody fully understands how difficult that job is, but we do like to criticize them a lot.
Absolutely.
At every sporting event, you see that going on. So tell me a little bit about some of the things that Park does, Champions of Character. I try to get a kind of good perspective of what each of the institutions are doing to adhere to these core values, but also maybe some activities that go on that help reinforce some of the core values. What are some things that go on at Park where athletes can participate in things that helps make them aware of it?
Yeah, at the beginning of the year, again, we're trying to surround these student athletes from the moment they get on campus. And so every year we do a student athlete welcome. Last year we brought in the fire department. We ran them through stations where they're having to carry their teammates on a gurney. Maybe they're carrying the hoses up the stadium steps. And then we finished that off with alumni coming back and cooking a fabulous Jamaican barbecue for us, right? And so that was a moment where, again, the president's there to welcome. I talk a little bit about Champions Character, and again, laying out the expectations of what we value and think is important. And then having those opportunities to engage with your teammates. That's kind of our great kickoff on how to do that. Where I find that I really then step in with Champions of Character is I am visiting with each team prior to competition. I'm going out to practice. In the heart, there's a huge focus on soccer and behavior out on the field. And so we are emphasizing that when you score a goal, especially at a visiting team's venue, that celebration, then you turn it. We're not telling you not to celebrate, but you take it in front of your own bench. You slide, you do whatever you got to do. And, but you have your moment so that there is no question that can lead an official, commissioner, whoever it may be, to question our character and our intention there. Now, we can't control that. You have to be allowed to celebrate. You gotta, there are, I think as administrators, sometimes we forget what it feels like to compete, you know? And so I think that's one of the things when I moved from the national office back to campus, I had to remind myself, what are those feelings that they've got running through their body at those moments? And again, they don't want to disappoint, right? I was just asking my daughter this morning, what is it about a great coach, you know? And she's like, well, I never feel like we disappoint them. And so when we're talking again with those teams, we're just laying out where we have seen issues before and providing them other options to help with champions of character and what our expectations are. Yeah.
I need to come back here during your opening in August here to get some Jamaican food. And all that sounds like I should have scheduled the interview for then. That would have been awesome. And I would love to see them carrying the different hoses and stuff. That's actually a really good idea. I had never heard of anybody doing that. So I always like to get a perspective on what other schools are doing for that. I like that idea a lot. Final thoughts here. What's one thing you wish every coach, athlete, or fan understood about influence in sports? The quote that comes to mind is Charles Barkley. Everybody's heard this quote where it's like, I'm not a role model, I'm just a basketball player, right? But what you said before is true. Whether you like it or not, you are in the public eye. People are watching you. You're going to be influencing somebody in some way, whether positive or negative. So what are some things that maybe from a coaching perspective, athlete's perspective, maybe even from a fan's perspective, about how people can be a positive influencer in sports?
Yeah. Do you mind if I take this again kind of role by role? So I think for coaches, and again, this is coming from experience of you never stop being a kid's coach. So once you've been their coach, they're always going to look at you in that context. And so what you say matters to them. Even if you think at that point you're a fan for the other team, they can hear you and it makes an impact. So you are taking on a precious role at whatever level when you sign up to be a coach, and you just cannot take that lightly. As an athlete, I love this from my husband. There's so much I learned from him and how he's helping to parent our children. And one of the things he says before every practice and before every game, run fast, play hard, and then our kids respond, love the game. And boy, they are fun to watch. They are fun to watch, and I think it is cycling that through them every time. I'm going to run hard, I'm going to run fast, I'm going to play hard, and love the game, and I love that for them. And then I think fans, when we come into a venue, wherever that venue is, are we walking into an educational setting? Or are we walking into an entertainment setting? There is a difference between the paid ticket at a professional sports level game versus what you're getting at the collegiate and youth level. And I think so many times our perspective as fans gets lost because it just automatically drifts to thinking that it's at the entertainment level, and we're missing the mark when our expectation is there versus the educational context. And so, and I'm hearing Jim Carr talk a lot about, you know, right now in regards to the purpose of the NAIA and the experience that we're providing is educational. And I love that. And I'm looking forward to seeing more come out about that. So I think that'll be good. And then again, as parents, just help protect the sandlot, right? Like in the end, just go out and play with your kid and tell them you love watching them play. That's the only thing they need to hear from you.
Yeah. When you mentioned the thing that your husband tells your kids, it reminded me, actually, I don't know if you follow Proactive Coaching, Bruce Brown. He has a lot of interesting things, and he just actually posted, I'm not actually sure who posted it, but someone from Proactive Coaching posted this, and it was a quote from Adam Wainwright, a pitcher for the Cardinals who's retired now, and it said, for kids, I have 3 rules. 1, be a great teammate. 2, have fun. And 3, play your hardest. Those are my 3 rules I say every time we get out of the car, and they say them back to me. And that is a great way to play the game. So kind of the same idea. Yeah, your husband said run fast, all that, but it's all about, looking out for not just what you want to do, but your teammates, trying your hardest. Effort is definitely something that's that a lot of times people, they look at the X's and O's, wins and losses, but they're not looking at how much did I put into this, which is important as well. And doing it not just for yourself, but for your teammates as well. And that focus there makes everything a lot different when you're thinking, it's not just about me, it's about my teammates. Anything else you can think of that we didn't touch on today as far as being a positive influencer, both from a administrative role, but also as an athlete's perspective as well? Anything else you can think of we didn't touch on?
No, we covered a lot.
We did.
It was good.
I gave you a lot of loaded questions too. Yeah. There's a lot to cover there. So
yeah, you know what? Smile through the things, right? Like life is hard and it's getting louder. And so find those people that are your people and can keep you uplifted, because we're trying to fill a lot of cups.
Yeah.
And we got to make sure ours is filled in return.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate it, Kristin, the time, and appreciate your hospitality and having me here at Park University. And did a great job, and I appreciate all the words you have to say.
Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Playing with a Purpose podcast. Special thanks again to Kristin Gillette for being my guest this week. Be sure to listen to this episode and future episodes on Spotify or anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also catch the Playing with a Purpose podcast on the Freed-Hardeman Athletics Champions of Character website at gofhulions.com/champions of character and on the NAIA Champions of Character website at naia.org/champions of character. Join me for our next episode as I talk with Sarah Eckinger and Chesney Salee at the NAIA National Office regarding the NAIA Champions of Character initiative. And remember, winning isn't just about the scoreboard, it's about the character we build along the way. We'll see you next time on the Playing with a Purpose podcast.